lot of pro-life workshops, so she knew the harms that could come to her after finishing the process, which were like, um, yeah, so there's like various things that can happen to you after completing the abortion, and so my speech today is going to be about the moral objectives that exist to widespread access to abortion. I have attended many pro-life workshops, and yes, you might be thinking, oh well, they have biased opinions, but I have also done my own research, so this isn't as biased or anything. Many women and young teenagers don't go into an abortion clinic not knowing what it is or what can happen to them after completing the process. And sometimes technology can fail to finish the process completely or correctly. And it is a very painful and expensive process as well. And women do not come out the same once they complete it. Sometimes the technology we use can fail. Like, for example, one of the most common abortions that they do is the aspiration abortion. And in this process, the doctor inserts metal plates into the female's private part, and it opens it up in order for them to insert a vacuum to suck out the baby or the fetus. And sometimes the process isn't fully finished, so women leave the abortion clinic thinking everything is finally done, but then they get into intense bleeding and very strong cramps, and so they have to return back to the clinic only to find out that they're going to go into labor and give birth to remaining body parts, which could be an arm or leg. Sometimes it's the head, and that can cause infection in the uterus. Another common abortion is the dilation and evacuation, and this process is kind of like the other abortion, but in this one they insert a knife inside the womb, and it cuts the fetus in half, and then they use the vacuum to suck it out. So not only does this process as well leave remaining fetal body parts, but it like leaves a scar in your stomach, and the other one causes infection. So there's infection that's involved and scars, and I don't know, sometimes women can die from this. Women who get abortions are often poor, so they feel like they won't be able to support the child. So they go and get an abortion, and they don't know that they're going to be suffering a lot. Carl Everett, a former abortion clinic director, states, "I've never been able to come up with the words to describe the abortion procedure. I've seen sonograms of the baby pulling away from the instruments, and the mother is hurt if she cannot afford to be put to sleep." So often, the women who get abortions are very poor, and they can only afford to have the procedure done on them, but they cannot afford to be put to sleep or get anesthesia because it costs a lot of money. Which leads to my next point is abortions. The cheapest abortion can be up to $400, and that's ranges from 14 weeks. And then the 22 weeks abortion can cost up to $2,000 in California, and that's in Planned Parenthood. A study done by the University of Manitoba in Canada found abortion can also cause women to not come out the same after the procedure is done. Many women commit suicide or get into drugs. And so a study done by the University of Antioquia in Canada found women who have had abortions are about 4 times more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol than those who carry their pregnancy to the term. And then also, and this picture is going to be a bit traumatizing, so if you guys want to look away, you can. That's an abortion after 22 weeks, and sometimes those arms and legs can stay in the fallopian tube and cause infection and death. I have a statistic right here. Find it. Oh, a study in the British Medical Journal discovered that the rate of suicidal women after birth was 5.9 out of 100,000. Among women who had abortions, the rate was 34.7. The suicide rate for women who had not been pregnant was 11.3. And so yeah, there's many harms that can come to from having an abortion. And so next time, don't try to fully trust technology, because it can lead to many serious problems in certain cases.
Junior, what did you think?
Well, abortion could be a touchy subject to some, I guess. And of course, she did really good with the strong points. Technology can fail. A lot of people lean towards it, but it does fail. The cost of abortion, I guess it ranges from 400 to 2,000, depending. That's pretty costly if you're in a jam. Things like, I'm a visual person. I know it's not a real subject you want to see pictures of, but that would help for some people. And really, just overall, it was pretty. The central idea of the abortion was pretty well thought.
All right. Well, I like the personal story at the beginning as an intensive device. It's dramatic. I think that you could deliver it a little bit more passionately. Your subject is okay. I think you've got a good, clear identification of what it is that you want to talk about. I do think you want to avoid using that phrase, my speech today. If I didn't say that before, we should probably, cross that off of your list of phrases that you include in your presentation. Everybody knows you're giving a speech. You don't need to identify that you're giving a speech, so it sounds a little bit redundant and unnecessary. You seem to be worried about the idea of bias at the beginning, and I think you recognize that you are on the brink of a persuasive type presentation. If you want to keep it informative, then kind of stick to the things that you're describing. I think you've got a good informative structure here if you would focus on that. You'd say, I'm going to describe the 2 most typical methods by which abortions take place, and I'm going to describe the complications that occur when women get abortions. That's a pretty straightforward structure and easy to follow if you keep it that way. That's not the way you preview it. I don't think that your preview is as complete as that was. You need to be a little bit more direct about how these points are going to develop. Internally, I thought you cited those points reasonably well, but again, there felt like there were times when you are just wandering around on the subject, especially, for instance, when you get to the end and you're talking about the statistical information that you finally start presenting. It felt like you had a statistic, then you didn't, and then suddenly you figured out where it was, and then you plugged it in, and it just needs to be better planned. You have, in the first couple of sections, when you talk about failure of technology, you mentioned situations where bad things happen, and the first question that popped into my head was, well, how often is this an occurrence? That it happens might be true, but people who go through any kind of surgery, there are complications that are possible. The question is, how likely are they? How frequent are they? Is this something that people should be worried about? And I didn't get any statistical information on that. I don't know the frequency with which somebody has to go through a birth of an arm or a leg after they've had an abortion. If that happens 1 out of 10,000 times, that doesn't sound like it's very frequent, and maybe it's not the big issue that you're talking about. On the other hand, if it's happening 10 out of 100 times, that's pretty significant. I have no clue as to how often it happens. That it happens, probably, but you don't present any information on it, other than that. And you may have it, but it's not in the speech.
Oh, no, it's just
Yeah.
I forgot to.
Yeah, so you need to do that, and you keep saying sometimes. I'm going, well, yeah, sometimes bad things happen, but that doesn't necessarily tell us that it's an inherent part or a significant part of what's going on. So, and that's the point that you seem to be making, is that this is something that people should be concerned about. So if it's something that we should be concerned about, you're kind of making an argument, even though it's not supposed to be a persuasive speech, then make the argument and complete it with that kind of data. In the end, when you're talking about the negative effects on women, I thought that you did okay when you cited some of the statistical information. This is actually where you actually start citing sources in the presentation. And you've got some statistical information on the use of drugs and negative consequences and suicide. I thought that you cited that pretty well, and I understood what you were saying. But your information about suicides compared to the general population, that sounded like it was going the exact opposite direction of what you would be implying. So I'm not sure if I missed something in the way the statistics were presented. It seemed like this would be another obvious place where a visual of some statistical information would solve that problem, so that you couldn't even make such a mistake in the comparison. Because it sounded like women who have abortions have a 5.9% risk of suicide, and those who don't have 11.9% risk of suicide. I'm going, well, have an abortion and you cut your risk of suicide in half. I'm sure that's not the point that you were trying to make, but that's what it sounded like you were saying, and I don't think that that's the way the data comes out. But I can't tell because I don't have a visual reference to go along with it, and I think that's something that you can fix. All right. Thank you.